Ingrid and Magdalena Cruz. Magdalena Cruz grew up knowing that she was alive because of a terrible crime. Her mother, Ingrid, was a resident at Monroe Developmental Center for severely disabled people. She was nonverbal and was said to have the mental state of a 2-year-old. Ingrid wore diapers and required round-the-clock care. That's why it was such a shock to the staff in her family when in May of 1986, Ingrid was discovered to be 5 months pregnant. Back in January of the same year, staff were attending to Ingrid when they noticed that her right hand and shoulder was bruised and she had a 9-inch abrasion on her back. Several months later, Ingrid came to the nurse's station with blood on her shirt. She also had a cut on her head and hip. Even though the only words Ingrid could say were ki 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 ki, she did not keep silent about her apparent distress. Allegedly, she would scream during the night and rip her clothes off, as well as repeatedly attack a male member of staff. It was noted that her outbursts usually occurred around men. In March, a bite mark was found on her breast, and 2 months later, an ultrasound revealed that she was 5 months pregnant. Alarm bells immediately rang at the center, as Ingrid could not give consent. It was evident she had been assaulted. Ingrid's family were called in for a meeting and it was suggested to them that she be moved to a different residential program for her safety and to protect her from abusive patients. On August 27, 1986, Magdalena Cruz was born, happy and healthy, yet the investigation into the strange circumstances of her birth led nowhere. When Magdalena was 18, she decided to get the answers her family desperately needed. However, an attorney would later tell her that nothing could be done because the statute of limitations for criminal and civil action had passed. Magdalena did not know where to go from there. Until in 2013, she read a story about a man who had been imprisoned for raping and impregnating a comatose woman who was a resident at the nursing home in which he worked. Magdalena thought her father could have done the same. In 2019, Magdalena filed public records requests with the Brighton and Rochester police departments concerning her mother's case. The Rochester police told her that Monroe Developmental Facility had never actually reported the rape, despite claiming that they did. Magdalena's lawyers requested records related to Ingrid's care, which detailed the injuries she had received before and during the pregnancy. Magdalena was able to find the identity of her father through Ancestry.com and matched with biological relatives from his side in Virginia. It would turn out that Magdalena's father was an employee of the facility, not a patient. Through the investigation and lawsuit, it was discovered that Monroe Center had multiple incidents of residential abuse, with at least 10 staff members being identified as and between 1976 and 1985. What Magdalena wants most from the lawsuit is to use any compensation to move Ingrid into a home suitable for her needs. She never wants her mother to have to be cared for by strangers ever again. My main goal is to give her, in her remaining years, a better life, she said. She's really never known what it is to really grow up with her family. Next we have Colleen Audrey Rice. In 1971, a woman's body was discovered in the desert near a dirt road in Mojave Country, Arizona. The victim was found inside a loosely woven white cotton sack that had been tied shut with a white cotton rope. The sack had the words, "Dear Pac, Ames Harris Neville Co." printed in green on it. The woman's identity remained unknown until 52 whole years later. The woman was estimated to be between 35 and 40 years old, 5 feet and 4 inches tall, and weighing around 125 to 140 pounds or 56 to 63 kilograms. She had curly brown hair and was dressed in a size 14 long-sleeved multicolored blouse along with a black long-sleeved cardigan sweater and burnt orange stretch pants. She wore black leather ankle-high boots and white socks. Detectives had no idea who the woman could possibly be, so they reached out to an artist from the Museum of Northern Arizona to create a composite sketch based on the victim's skull. The public was urged to contact the Mojave County Sheriff's Office if they recognized the woman in the sketch. No leads would come from this until October 2021. The Mojave Sheriff's Office reopened the case and once again asked for the public's help in identifying her. They also wanted to use advanced DNA testing to see if that could shed any light on the identity of the Mojave Jane Doe. In 2022, they set up a public fund and reached their goal of $6,500 in just 5 days. In January of 2023, just 3 months ago, 52 whole years after the victim was found, she was finally identified as Colleen Audrey Rice. However, the individual who murdered her is yet to be found. Anyone who has information regarding Colleen Audrey Rice or the incident is encouraged to contact the Mohave County Sheriff's Office SIU at 928-753-0753 or at the extension of 4408, or call the toll-free number at 800-522-4312 and reference DR hashtag 71-0383. Our third case is Deborah Atrops. On November 29, 1988, Robert Atrops notified the police that his estranged wife, Deborah Lee, was missing. He reported that he had picked up their adopted daughter from the babysitter in the town of Newburgh, Oregon. While his wife was at the hairdresser's in Tigard, Robert was expecting Deborah to pick up their daughter from Robert's home in Sherwood between 7:30 and 8 p.m., but claimed she never arrived. Robert called her family and friends to see if they knew anything, but when she couldn't be found, he informed the Tigard Police Department. At the time of Deborah's disappearance, the married couple had separated and Deborah had moved into a house in Salem with their daughter. The next morning, the sheriff's office took down an official missing persons report and entered the details of Deborah's missing car into their database. On December 1st, at around 9 a.m., Beaverton police received a complaint from a city public works employee that there was a suspicious vehicle parked at the dead end of Southwest Murray Road. The car was reported to have had no place, with the driver's seat window down and the keys in the ignition. On arrival, police were able to determine that this was the missing car of Deborah Atrops. Upon searching the vehicle, they made a gruesome discovery. Deborah's body was stuffed into the trunk of the car. Based on its position and rigor mortis, it was clear to the police that her body had been placed in the trunk after her death. An autopsy was conducted the next day and it was determined that Deborah had been physically assaulted before she was strangled to death. But unfortunately, this was all the police were able to learn, and the murder remained unsolved for 35 years. In May 2021, the Washington County Sheriff's Office collaborated with their cold case unit to reopen the investigation into Deborah's murder. Over the next 18 months, investigators conducted new witness interviews and re-examined forensic evidence. They presented this evidence to a grand jury who indicted Robert Atrops for second-degree murder. The cold case unit alleged that Robert, who was 34 years old at the time, killed his 30-year-old wife and reported her missing when she failed to pick up their adopted daughter on November 29, 1988. Our fourth and final case is of Patricia Copta. Patricia Copta was a familiar figure in downtown Pittsburgh in the early 90s. Many people knew her as the Sparrow Lady, and being a devout Roman Catholic, people often saw her on the streets preaching the end of the world. One evening, she didn't come home. A few weeks after Patricia's disappearance, her husband Bob reported her missing to the authorities. He said that he had waited that long because it wasn't uncommon for Patricia to drop out of sight for short periods. He also said that Patricia had complained about migraines in the lead up to her disappearance and was suspected of schizophrenia. Her sister Gloria even said that before she disappeared, Patricia had said she had seen an angel. Bob remembered that Patricia had said she wanted to go to Puerto Rico because of the nice weather. He informed the Puerto Rican police and placed ads in the newspapers there, but never received a response. 7 years later, police officially declared Patricia dead, even though there was no evidence of her whereabouts. In May 2021, 29 years after Patricia went missing, police in Pittsburgh were contacted by an agent from Interpol and a social worker from Puerto Rico, saying that they believed Patricia was a resident in an adult care home there. Patricia had been admitted to the nursing home in 1999 when she was found wandering the streets of Puerto Rico. Through the years, she refused to divulge any information about her private life, yet when she began to suffer with dementia, Patricia started revealing small bits of information which eventually led authorities to contact police in Pittsburgh and confirm Patricia's identity after nearly 30 years.